Why are the religious so blatantly dumb? That's a question we ask all the time around here, but it seems apropos at the moment because, well, you'll see. These people have problems, and they're so far out of their ever-loving minds that they're not capable of seeing just how stupid they actually are. Because they don't care. This is a masterclass in theistic idiocy. So let's get to it. We're going to look at a video from a really tiny channel. In fact, right now he has exactly 2 subscribers. A channel called Stephen Graham. This is the first video on his channel, and he's already getting trashed because, well, you're going to have to see that for yourself. This guy has massive problems. He needs a rubber room. If you wanted to see a perfect example of what the religious do wrong, here you go. This should be all you need, and once you see the problem, you're going to be able to see it in every single apologist under the sun. So, how bad can it get? Well, strap in and we'll see.
I don't believe God exists.
That's good. Video over. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great day. We just had a theist video admit to the most defensible position that one can have on the subject. That was easy, wasn't it? Oh, I know that we're never going to get that. The religious are far too unreasonable, but wouldn't it be great if we could just call it a day early once in a while? But unfortunately, today is not that day, so let's get back to it.
You know, this is I'm sorry. I don't believe God exists. That was another one. Prove to me that God exists. Show me evidence of God's existence.
Why does it feel like we came into this in the middle of a thought? Now, that happens a lot in religious videos, right? We've seen people just say things and you don't have any clue where the hell any of it came from. It's kind of like he forgot to turn the camera on for the first part of his monologue. So I guess we're just going to have to go with it and see if it ever makes any sense. Yes, show me evidence for the thing that you claim is real, such that I am also convinced that this thing that you claim is real. And I do that with everything. I expect evidence for any rational claim, and in the absence of that evidence, I reject that claim as unsupported. This is one of those, why is this even a question things? Who in their right mind wouldn't want to see the evidence for the claim that's being made? Who in their right mind indeed?
Don't be like, be like, sure, I'll definitely do that.
Then do it, because not one theist in the history of the world has ever managed it. Not one. Because when we ask for evidence, we mean show us something that objectively, demonstrably, positively, specifically points to the entity that you claim exists, having a verifiable presence in the world that we all share. That's evidence. If I say, give me evidence for a walrus, you have to walk in with a walrus or something similar. There it is. Study it. That's the walrus. Now, do the same thing with your God. If we say, show us a walrus, we don't want to see philosophical arguments. We want evidence. We want the walrus. The religious have none of that, though. They don't even try. That's why they look so dumb.
God's going to throw them off. Totally do it. Who cares?
Apparently not you, because he's treating this as a joke, and we, or at least I'm not. I'm serious about this. Show me the evidence, because nothing less will do. You can make all the excuses that you like for why you have no evidence, but without the evidence that you ought to have, I have no reason whatsoever to take any of your claims seriously. I don't care what you have faith in. I don't care what you like. I don't care what makes you feel good. I care what you can actually prove is true. Do that or stop making a fool of yourself. It's really not that hard.
Because you do have proof, and I'm about to give it to you.
No, you don't. Like I said, no theist in the history of the world has ever had any evidence for their supernatural claims. They just have claims and bald rationalizations and blind faith. That is not enough. That will never be enough. So we can be pretty sure that this guy's going to just make a fool of himself, and all you have to do is look at the comments on his video. I like the one that says, "What is really scary is that this guy can vote." So I don't think we can be that confident in his claims, do you? But I'm certainly willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if he can actually do anything, which I don't think he can. And it wouldn't be the first time that I disagreed with the comment section on a video, so hey, they could be wrong too. So anyway, Stephen, go ahead, present your evidence. Let's see what you've got.
All right. It's called the preconditions of intelligibility.
Oh, so you've got no evidence. This is just presuppositionalist stupidity. Okay, fine, we'll just rip that apart, no problem. This is why I specifically said that you needed evidence, not philosophical arguments, because those are not evidence for anything that actually exists. For concepts, maybe. For reality, absolutely not. If you want to say that your God is a concept that exists only in your head, fine, use all the philosophical arguments you want. But if that's not what you're doing, then this is going to get you nowhere. I'm sure we're going to get into that coming up, though, so go ahead, good sir. Continue.
You use it. They use it all the time, every day of their life. Every time they walk out their door or get up in the morning, when they breathe, they're using these. Okay, I'm about to explain it. The first precondition is absolute morality.
Bullshit does not exist. I think we're starting to see why this idiot is getting pounded in his comments, because he certainly deserves it. This is really where I think we need to point out that there's an awful lot of dumb people on YouTube. I mean, that's obvious, but I mean theists, which sadly is also obvious, but you get my meaning. They cannot possibly think that their made-for-religious believers content isn't open to anybody who just happens by, right? They can't be that dumb, can they? Well, everyone who watches my videos is going to be a Christian just like me and believe all the things that I do. No, that's not how this works. You are going to get evaluated by people who do not share your beliefs, and they're going to demonstrate all the places that you are going bizarrely wrong. This guy is learning this as we speak. Now, I don't think it's going to matter, but it should. If he doesn't get embarrassed and take this crap down, then there is something seriously wrong with him upstairs. I don't think this guy should be able to drive personally, much less vote. He's got way too many severe mental problems going on.
Okay? Absolute morality exists. We know absolute morality exists because if you give somebody a really hardcore, crazy scenario like torturing babies for fun, when is it okay to torture babies for fun?
Go to another culture that thinks it is and see. Because there are plenty that we can point to in history. Of course, they always just tack on that for fun on the end, just to get around the obvious examples. But baby torture and murder, that's been practiced forever and is a part of a lot of major cultures. Infanticide is a thing. Now, in our particular culture, that may not be acceptable, but these people tend to be painfully ignorant of anything outside their front door. These are dumb people who don't know anything about the real world because reality terrifies them. And that's not a good thing. They're just making fools of themselves. And that's not exactly a surprise.
Never, unless you're a psycho, right? And we can both agree that you have to be a psycho to say it's okay to torture babies for fun under any circumstance, you know?
And that's something else that I've pointed out before. The attempt to smear anyone who doesn't agree with you as having something wrong with them. This is really, really common and not just among the religious. Just because they don't agree with you doesn't mean that they're insane. This is, of course, an emotional defense mechanism for people who can't be bothered to actually think about their beliefs and consider the positions of others. And I mean the evidentially validated positions of others, because the evidence actually matters. You need to be able to have this back and forth conversation to see who is most defensively right. But they don't care about the defense, do they? They don't care about the evidence. They just want to feel good. They've just been indoctrinated into their beliefs, and they can't imagine any other viewpoints. And that's just sad, isn't it?
Absolute truth. Absolute truth exists. Oh, there are no absolute truths. Well, that person just made an absolute true statement. You say, well, that's an absolute true statement you just made. So anything, we do know truth. We have truth. We know that something can be true, you know?
There are truths. They're called facts. The speed of light in a vacuum is true in that there is a number that can be accurately tested and applied to the idea that is demonstrable and valid and evidentially supported. So far as we know, the speed of light in a vacuum is universal, although we can certainly not demonstrate that because we haven't been everywhere, so we haven't tested it everywhere, so we don't have the experimental data to support it. But to the best of our current understanding, the speed of light is what it is. It is true in the sense that it is a fact. But here's the thing. Truth has to be demonstrable. It can't just be asserted. It has to be backed up with evidence. As far as I'm concerned, there is no truth without objective support. And wasn't he claiming to have an argument for God? So far, all he's done is made a bunch of empty claims that are easily dismantled. If this is supposed to impress me, I'm sorry, but it's not. It's just not. You're going to have to do a whole lot better than this.
Laws of logic. A car can't be that's the third one. A car can't be inside the garage and outside the garage at the same time, you know?
Yes, but that is demonstrable. And I know that bugs a bunch of philosophy fanboys that the laws of logic are based on observation and not some kind of pure thought, but that's the way it actually works. We have never found any instance of something that is both A and not A at the same time and in the same way. The laws of logic are just like science. Here are all the observations that we have ever made. They seem to bear out X. Therefore, until we find something that contradicts X, we're just going to assume that it's true because that's what all the evidence that we have points to. It's not absolutely true, which I think is why so many people get upset when I point out the reality, because they want absolute truth, but absolute truth isn't something that we're capable of evaluating. I don't know that absolute truth is something we can even speak to in the moment. We can only do the best that we can do at the time that we do it. That's how reality actually functions. Some people really need to get a clue.
We know that to be true. It's a laws of logic. We have that common ground. We know it exists. We know that it happens. You know, we have those preconditions.
But we don't. We assume that it does based on the observations that we've made, but we can't actually know that it's universally applicable. Maybe 3 galaxies over, it's not. We don't actually know until we get there. This is where a lot of people get uncomfortable because they want to think they've got a good handle on things, and in actuality, we might not. That's just the truth of the matter. Most of what we do on a daily basis is just educated guesswork. We're doing the best that we can with what we've got in the can right now. That doesn't make it actually true. It doesn't make it universally true. It's the actual truth that matters, and understanding the limits of our knowledge is a big part of that, no matter how it makes you feel.
Uniformity in nature. I'm giving you 4. There's technically just 3. It would be absolute morality, laws of logic, and uniformity in nature.
So what? Because this is supposed to somehow prove God. And he hasn't even mentioned God yet, you notice. Because what I think is coming is the ever-present argument from ignorance. I don't get it, therefore God. And I can stop him right there. Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't mean God done it! This is exactly where every theist fails, because they're all doing essentially the same thing. Here's some stuff I like, and here's a conclusion that I'm emotionally attached to, so let's just put them all together and call it a day. Sorry, it doesn't work that way, but we'll get into that more as he continues, I assume. He's only halfway through his video, so there's a long way to go.
But I like to add absolute truth because that kind of coincides with absolute morality. All right, so uniformity in nature is not to be confused with uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism is rates and conditions has never changed in the whole world, and we know you don't have to mention this stuff, but we know that is not true because of the global flood, and things might have been different then. We have fossil records of huge cockroaches the size of a surfboard.
This is what happens when you're painfully ignorant and not afraid to show it. The religious do this a lot, throwing out laughably absurd claims because they know that their intended religious audience isn't bright enough to know any better. The biggest cockroach ever found was about the size of an avocado. There is a limit to the size of any insect based on physics and its physiology. Insects rely on diffusion to get oxygen to their cells because they've got no active respiratory system. The only reason we saw larger, say, dragonflies in early history is because the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere was so much higher. It was much easier for it to diffuse through their systems. So no, there were no cockroaches the size of surfboards, unless you're talking about really, really tiny surfboards. But then again, this guy's talking about the flood, which never happened, so he's an ignorant moron. Big surprise there.
It's crazy. We got some crazy stuff out there we found. All right. But either way, racing conditions have not been exactly the same. So we're not promoting uniformitarianism. We're promoting uniformity in nature.
I'm kind of letting him just ramble, just to make a fool of himself, because holy crap, this guy's a kook. But this is how a lot of theists are, if you notice. At least a lot of them know enough not to say the quiet parts out loud, but this guy's different. This guy has no filter. He doesn't understand what words mean. And I'm sure all of this came from mindless apologists and idiots in the pulpit, and he's just never bothered to check any of it out because he's a moron. He doesn't care. They just said it, so it's gotta be true. This is the problem that we see in virtually every video though, right? These people don't care about reality. They just really want to believe. It's why when I left the faith, I was able to do it successfully because I cared about the truth, not about the stuff that I'd had shoved into my head from a young age. Yes, it was hard to give a lot of it up because that's all I knew. But I cared more about having an accurate picture of reality than I did about having these comforting beliefs in my head. And I wanted to make sure that the beliefs that I actually had could be fitted in to actual reality. And when I looked at it, I found that I couldn't. The religious are only looking for comfort, damn reality and its uncomfortable facts. I was looking for the facts, damn religion and its stupid beliefs. I find religion to be completely unacceptable. These people are just idiots.
When you go outside, you can trust tomorrow that the gravity is going to work in your favor and not send you off flying into space. We have that control. We know that there's control and uniformity in nature. So those are the three preconditions of intelligibility that prove God's existence, that prove that God exists. Okay?
You haven't even mentioned God up to this point. What are you, mental? This is the whole reason things like the Kalam cosmological argument fall apart. It doesn't mention any gods either. But Christians get to the end and say, see, I just proved God. Well, guess what? Muslims do the exact same thing with the exact same argument, but they just claim they proved Allah, not God. Remember, the Kalam started off from Islam, not Christianity. You don't just get to pick a conclusion that you like and say, see, I proved it. No, you did absolutely nothing of the sort. Just because you really like the idea that it's true, that doesn't make it true. You have to prove that it's true. You have to directly demonstrate that your God is real and is actually responsible for whatever the hell it is you're claiming, which they never ever do. They just leap past all the steps that they need to cover because they're on a mad dash toward the conclusion that they already started with. That is not proof for God. It's just their emotional comfort making unsupported claims. And that is not impressive.
That is a more detailed answer to prove God exists. Obviously you've got the minor ones where you can just say, hey, look at that building. How do you know there's proof that there's a builder? The building is the proof there's a builder. What if you find a painting in the middle of the woods? I think we've talked about this before, but that would be kind of a minor one. But if they're intelligent and they're going to be asking you these questions or seem to be like having like a book smart kind of intelligence, like a college student, they're going to ask you those questions and they're going to expect the preconditions of intelligibility answer, which now I gave you, so it's super easy.
I have never seen someone talk so fast but say absolutely nothing of any substance. I tried really hard to find a place in there to cut him off, and I just couldn't do it. Now, this is something that I've noticed, and tell me in the comments if you've seen this too, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily a theist thing only, but I see it a lot from the religious. But if you watch any of the atheist call-in shows, you're going to find a lot of theists who just talk constantly. They won't shut up. It's just on and on and on and on and on without taking a breath. They talk over everyone else. They interrupt everybody. They never give anyone a chance to respond. I don't know if they're nervous or if they just like the sound of their own voice, but I figure that if they don't let anybody get a word in edgewise, they can just assume that they won the exchange. This is a serious problem for the presuppositionalists, I've noticed. They never come up for air. It's just constant blah, 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 nonstop. And in fact, I've noticed that they spend an awful lot of time trying to tell other people what they actually think. They're not there for a conversation. It's a lecture. They're preaching. They're just whining from the pulpit, and reality doesn't actually work that way. You have to have a back and forth conversation. And if you can't do that and let the other person talk and critique what you're saying, then you're doing intelligence wrong. You say something, you shut up, and the other person speaks. Back and forth, back and forth. That's how this works. The religious, especially, they seem to have a real problem with that. They don't want to shut up. They think that as long as they can keep talking, they're winning. And that's not how that works. They just want to believe. But that's not how you get to rational conclusions. That's how you make a fool of yourself.
Now, when they say, well, those could exist without God, ask them to show you an example of how that can exist without God.
But that's the problem. You're just asserting that it does. You haven't backed it up in any way. Like I said, he didn't even bring God into the picture until the very end. Therefore, God. But I'm sorry, that's not a foregone conclusion. This is basically a variation on the look at the trees argument. There are trees, therefore God, said really fast. But that doesn't mean a God did it. That's something you just tacked on to the end because you really wanted it to be true. But that doesn't make it true. And they can't understand that. It just has to be because they really want it to be. That's why this whole thing is so fucking stupid. And then he just tries to shift the burden of proof. You now have to prove me wrong when I never proved myself right in the first place. Nope, that's not how that works either. Stop making a fool of yourself, because that's all these people are doing.
Especially use absolute morality, because that's the easiest one. That's the strongest one. Because how can you say, you justify, I know it's wrong, but how can you justify within your worldview, without God, that torturing your baby is completely wrong no matter what circumstance?
There's just so much wrong here that I don't even know what to say. First off, you're the one making all the assertions and not backing any of them up. You haven't demonstrated that it's wrong. You might think so, but that doesn't make it true. Your assertions mean jack shit. But again, he's just pushing it off on others because he can't be wrong. I mean, just ask him. But that's not how this works either. This is why the religious don't understand evidence. They figure, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you think that I am, but they figure that so long as it sounds good to them, it's just got to be true. So long as they get emotional comfort from it, it's absolutely the case. But that is not how it works. This is why they're always engaging in the argument from ignorance, but that doesn't make any of it true. Just because you can't come up with an explanation that you like better, that doesn't mean that what you believe is true. That's the whole point of the evidence part. You have to prove that it's true. Not assert it, not assume it, not have faith in it. Prove it. You need to look at the real world and you need to say, what do I need to do to demonstrate that this thing that I'm claiming actually exists? Not just assert it, prove it. And that's the thing they can never, ever do. But I like it doesn't mean anything. It just means you're an idiot. It means you haven't gotten anywhere remotely close to providing evidence that the stuff that you're saying actually exists in demonstrable reality. You're just making a fool of yourself. And I trust that's no surprise to anyone, because this is how the religious operate. There's always that massive leap at the end to, therefore God. Well, I'm sorry, but you don't get to make that leap. You have to prove that your conclusion is evidentially warranted. And they're not even trying. They're just assuming, and that's just stupid.